When talking about the Bryan Kohberger, Idaho 4 Moscow student murder massacre, we've heard a few times the Ted Bundy Chi Omega sorority killings in Florida. Heard it compared since the beginning. People thought that this crime was reminiscent of a Ted Bundy crime. Sorority girls. Ted Bundy used.
I didn't think it was.
I agree with you. I don't think it's that reminiscent, but there are some certain aspects that we could compare and contrast and kind of look at that I think are interesting.
Yeah.
So,
are we just comparing and contrasting to the Idaho 4 suspect, vaguely, veiled suspect, or to Bryan Kohberger?
So, I don't know.
Okay.
I guess I didn't really think like that.
We'll...
I was thinking more about the crime, I guess, and the suspect, I guess. Not necessarily Bryan Kohberger.
Yeah.
So yeah, thinly veiled suspect. I would go with that. So this crime starts right after Ted Bundy escaped a jail in Colorado, where he climbed out of the roof or whatever. Yeah. And then he got rearrested and then jumped out of a 2-story window in the law library and then did his whole track across America, stealing cars, taking buses, and made it down to Florida.
Crawled through a light. Literally took out the light and crawled through one of those square lights into a guard's house.
And he lost weight for months just to do it.
I know.
It's crazy. It's wild. His lawyer noticed his weight loss too. It was sudden apparently, and it was a lot.
He literally just stopped eating.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Dedicated. So he makes his way to Florida. And this is in Tallahassee, and he rents a room that is 2 blocks down the street from the Chi Omega sorority house. He himself was in, university for a while, and it seems like actually quite a few of his crimes took place in university settings, in a town, a student, many of them.
His whole adult life, it seemed like he was in a university setting.
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
I wonder why. I guess that was just his MO.
Maybe just women are more common.
That type of woman too, that he liked, that fit his victimology.
Yeah.
But
strange.
So he rents this room, which that room is gone now, by the way. They tore it down and it's a parking lot. I saw somebody walk down there. It was kind of interesting seeing all of it on the street. But so he rents this room, and one night, it's actually the night before the murders. It's pretty late at night. He goes to this club called Sherrod's, and Sherrod's, I have an advertisement here for it. It's a disco dancing club.
Boogie down.
We're talking 1978, January 14th. He goes there, and the cops interviewed multiple girls, and multiple sorority sisters were there, including both victims that night.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's the connection, because I always thought he entered it in a rampage fit, because I think he did multiple crimes within that 24-hour period.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. But so that night he's there. We don't know if he ever encountered those 2 specific victims, but he did encounter sorority girls from that sorority.
Quite a coincidence.
Multiple of the sorority sisters saw him that night. One of the survivors said she didn't notice him, but there were other sorority girls that did, and said that he looked like he was older, much older, that they noticed him because he was scanning the room and staring at girls, and it was making them uncomfortable, and he was a lot older than them.
That's so strange. That is the opposite of Ted Bundy.
It is. And
Literally
I think this really speaks to his escalation at this time, because he does go on a rampage. And he picks a victim way later, like later on after this crime, which is the 12-year-old, which normally he didn't kill children. So something was going on there. He escaped multiple times, and he did things that weren't like him. He changed his MO kind of a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if he was trying to get like, I'm going to pay back society for locking me up. So I'm going to do the worst of the worst that anybody could do. Children and college kids, like, you know what I mean?
He was always doing college girls, it seems like, or a lot of them were, but these were pretty young.
Yeah.
But anyway, they notice him. He actually asked one of them to dance, and she made a joke to her friends, and she's like, look at this guy I'm about to dance with. He looks like an ex-con. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, you know, one of the survivors actually wrote a book trying to dispel the idea that he was charming and charismatic.
Oh, dude.
I don't know how she could have caught
the video
of the court. I know his trial. I feel like that's a lost cause. You know, I support her. She's a survivor, and I feel bad that she went through that, but I don't think you're going to be able to accomplish that.
Disgusted at the interest that people had.
She was, for sure, and I understand that.
I get it too, but his charisma doesn't have anything to do with his disgusting darkness that's in him. You can have both, and it doesn't make you better or worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah, wild.
Yeah, it is. So, apparently, when he was leaving the club or standing outside or something, it was later reported by a woman outside that he asked her, that Bundy asked her, are you a Chi Omega sorority sister? Like, are you in that sorority? And she said, no. And he said, you're lucky.
No way.
Yeah. So he was specifically targeting those sorority sisters.
Are you sure?
Yeah. That was what was reported to the police when he talked to all of them.
Whoa.
Now, could she be mistaken? I don't know. There was actually a ton of women who came out and claimed to have been assaulted by Ted Bundy, and they can't verify a lot of them.
Well, yeah.
Because people were obsessed with him.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
There's those couple, and that one that we talked about that ended up being able to be proved. She just was part of that religious sect or whatever in the Utah area and didn't want to be seen as like not being pure, which
is sad.
It's so sad.
It's horrible. Horrible. But I don't know when she reported that. I'm assuming it was really close to the time of the crime. So I think it's true, but look it up yourself and see what you think. So then later that night, and this is about 2:45 in the morning, he walks down to the Chi Omega house, and he goes through the backyard and notices the combination lock on the back door is broken. That's strangely reminiscent of Idaho 4. Their back door was broken. And he picks up a log. Some people have said it's like a branch, but I think it was like a log.
Yeah, I think it was a really big
log
stick. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he walks in there, goes up to the second floor, and he first enters the first victim's room, which is Margaret Bowman, and attacks her and then strangles her with pantyhose. And then he goes across the hall to Lisa Levy, and he does the same thing, but he essays her that time. And then he goes to another room where the two survivors actually are, where he hits both of them with the log. Actually, at first, he tripped and made a loud noise, which woke Ruben up, one of the survivors, and I heard her account of this, and she said she heard something loud that woke her up, and she saw this dark figure standing over her with something in their hand, and then she said he just smashed it on her face, and at first it didn't hurt. She felt nothing.
That's when you're hurt.
Well, and then she said it was excruciating, and she the whole time, like after she claimed he left and assaulted someone else, but according to everything I've seen, that doesn't appear to be the way it's reported. But maybe one of the other victims were assaulted after. I don't know. That's just the order I heard it reported in.
Known or
the order.
What I mean?
Yeah, the order of the victims doesn't really matter that much. But
not in this case. In some cases, when you're trying to use evidence and it can be important, but yeah, not in this case. Yeah.
Yeah. So then he leaves, is what she said, and comes back, and she's trying to make herself as small as possible, she said. And she said the whole time she heard the other assault that she thought she was screaming, but her jaw was broken and her face was smashed in, so she was really just gurgling. It's that horrific. It's that horrible.
I knew it was that horrific. And he was literally like a terror, dude.
He was ruthless. I just can't imagine what they went through. But he comes back and she's trying to make herself as small as possible. And then bright lights fill the room and save her life. And it's believed that it was one of the other sorority girls on a date coming back with their boyfriend and the car lights, because her room faced the back of the house, and that's where they would pull up to park.
So you mean to tell me he was going to these girls' rooms one at a time?
Yeah.
Because that's not how it's portrayed in most cases.
Oh, it's one at a time. And by the time he got to the survivors, he had been in there 15 minutes.
Okay, because that's not how it... I've watched a lot of different videos on this, and I have heard that he went room to room like that, but I also heard that it was chaos in there, and it was like anybody that was within his reach, he was after the first victim or maybe the first two or something like that.
I mean, I don't know if you'd call it chaos, because there is a survivor who wasn't touched. There's actually 3, but she was not assaulted at all and had no idea he was even there.
Okay, until like he didn't know she was there.
Yeah, he didn't know she was there. She was asleep. And she got up and found everyone. And apparently the roommate that came back with the boyfriend also saw him leaving the house with pantyhose over his face and saw a profile of him. And she's the only one who testified in court because she actually saw his face. And she could get, it was good enough to get a conviction.
Sure. Well, I think the teeth convicted him.
Yeah, but it was supporting. Like the other girls, because when she was deposed, which Ted Bundy deposed every single one of these victims and interrogated them himself.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know why that was allowed. I hope to God there was mediators and other people in there.
That's our justice system, man.
It's kind of messed up.
You're allowed to represent yourself, and he went to school to be an attorney, so he had enough knowledge to know what he was doing. I know,
but in the instance where you could be re-victimizing someone, that's kind of messed up, I think. There should be something there where...
Maybe there should be something where you're not allowed to talk to him directly, so like you can be your attorney, and then you coach somebody else to talk to the victim. Maybe there's something we could do better, for sure.
Yeah, because that's super messed up.
Yeah.
Like, imagine that. Your attacker and someone who just killed your friends is interrogating you.
I mean, I wouldn't show up. I'd be like, do whatever you want to me. Like, I'm just not going. Yeah. I don't care. Good luck.
It's really messed up. Anyway, Ruben, the one who wrote the book, she was saying that she didn't see his face, so her testimony couldn't really do much for the conviction.
Okay.
So that's why that one who saw him leaving the house was so important.
Yeah.
Anyway, then he leaves after seeing the lights. She said she noticed him like getting like frantic and jittery, and then he runs out. The girl sees him, but then he goes down like 4 more blocks down the street to another girl's house, which is which one is that? That's Valerie Duke was the one that was untouched. Cheryl Thomas. She was 21. He broke into her house while she slept, found her in her bed, and was doing the same thing to her. He still had the wooden club in his hand, and her neighbors heard noise and felt something was wrong, and they were literally like pounding on the door and calling and stuff, and he ran off, and she survived.
Yeah.
And then it's not a while before you hear from him, and then he kills the 12-year-old, and then he gets arrested and everything. But what I find interesting the most from this, because for one, the timeline, it is not as fast as everybody's been saying.
Yeah.
He was only like halfway through at 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And another aspect to this that I think is interesting is the essay aspect, which he normally did. And what, in a situation like the Idaho 4, that's what I would expect, is some kind of gratification. And are there very many knife killers who get gratification from straight up just stabbing?
So with Ted Bundy, I don't think I'm just trying to make sure I remember correct, because we've covered so many of these guys' cases. So with Ted Bundy, I don't think the sexual aspect was the driving force like it is with others. It was the power. And I think this is pretty well known too, because you have certain women that he didn't do essay with, that it was more about like the suffocating, and if he got you alone, he was going to make you unconscious over and over and over again, whether hitting, choking, like, you know, that weird control of power, like, I'm going to knock you out, then bring you back, knock you out, and I'm doing it like I'm choosing that on you. You know what I mean? I think that was more important with Ted Bundy than the sexual aspect. I think the sexual arousal came because of that. So,
because he assaulted the second victim, not the first, which is interesting.
Yeah, or maybe it was a numbers game. Like, I know there's a lot of girls in here, so.
But isn't that insane while the cops are at the sorority house? He's down the street at another house?
Yeah. When we covered his case a while back, I think at that point, we just glossed over a little bit of that. But yeah, I found that same thing super strange when I was researching into that too.
And then he goes on to do a child in.
I know. And that is...
And I think it's the escalation that sticks out the most to me. And with the Idaho 4 murders, I've always felt like from the beginning, this couldn't be the first. Whoever did this couldn't be the first. It's not even possible in my mind. This seems like a rampage, like a Ted, and I think that's why it's compared to Ted Bundy, is because it feels like a rampage.
Well, I think it's because it's a single house, and it feels like a rampage, and it is sorority or Greek kids that are involved.
Yep.
And they knew it was, at least in the somewhat shorter time span. So, taking all that into account, I understand why people draw the connection, but
I understand it too.
It's not the same.
It's not the same.
When you're looking at the time aspect of the Idaho 4 case, which is an important aspect of it, this doesn't support it. It hurts it.
It does hurt it. It doesn't support it. Now, it was pretty fast. And especially when you're talking about bludgeoning, not stabbing, like stabbing is going to be faster.
No. Stabbing is not going to be faster. If you slit a throat or stabbed a heart, yes. Not between 10 and 50 wounds in each person. That is not faster.
Oh, yeah. That's true, I guess.
So I think this hurts it all the way around.
Interesting.
Plus, I think one of the quickest ways to go is suffocation. And the first one, he suffocated.
And what's also interesting is that the roommates didn't hear it.
That is interesting.
They were sleeping. It's 2:45, 3 a.m. and they didn't hear it.
And you're sure of that?
The untouched roommate said she didn't hear anything.
Okay, because I think one of the recovered, so there's 3 total survivors, 1 untouched, and 2 that are mutilated forever. And I thought that I thought one of them couldn't remember anything, and the one that did remember thought that it was like chaos. But it could be that maybe she just felt like it was chaos because she was going through such a traumatic moment.
Yeah.
I don't know. So then what does that leave us, right? Was that one that was asleep and not touched? Was she drunk? Like, these factors matter.
They were if she was one of the ones at a club earlier that night, they very well could have been drunk.
Which, if you're drunk and you're asleep, it could be chaos and you might not wake up.
Well, see, I think it makes sense, honestly, that he went both victims, then survivor, and the 2 survivors that were assaulted, I mean, it would make sense that she would feel like it's chaos because he's going back and forth.
Yeah.
He's doing 2 people in the same room and she's surviving this. So it would feel like chaos to her. She didn't experience or see the other 2 victims who passed because they had their own rooms and they were separate.
Man, I'm going to have to dig back into that one because the image I have in my head is just that it's chaos. Like, he was doing anything and everything he could, from the biting, beating, strangling. He was literally like checking all the boxes. Scary, scary stuff.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, that a single person could do this.
And you know what's really sad is that that woman, Valerie Duke, who was untouched and survived this, she was across the hall from Lisa Levy. It said she didn't hear anything, and she saw all the victims after, and dropped out of school on the first anniversary of the crime, and then 4 months later died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
No way.
From the probably from the trauma of all of this, and it was before his trial.
Huh. That sucks. That sucks for her. That sucks for her family. It sucks that you gave him another victim.
Yeah. She is another victim.
Oh, absolutely.
She absolutely is.
You got to remember the time this was. We didn't have therapists.
1978.
Dude, like, trauma was looked down upon at this time.
Yeah.
You were like the edges of society. You were kicked out of society with PTSD or trauma-induced afflictions.
People didn't understand it at all.
No.
Not like we do now.
Yeah.
Not at all. And there's still such a stigma around it. But what I find really interesting, though, like I was saying, is the escalation. The escalation working up to the point, because previously Ted Bundy typically only did one person at a time.
He did, yep.
This was not normal for him to go in a house and just unleash on multiple victims.
Yeah, you're right.
So that escalation, and thinking about the Idaho 4 case, and from the beginning, like I said, I didn't feel like this could be a first timer. I just don't. I still do not believe that whoever did this, if it's Bryan Kohberger, then I think he has past victims.
Yeah.
If he's guilty, I think he has past victims, and we just don't know about it. But I found a study actually talking about the psychological or the psychology of serial killers, and talking about escalation in this. It talks about fantasies playing a significant role in the lives of serial killers. These fantasies provide an outlet for their inner desires and can escalate in intensity over time. Serial killers often engage in a process of fantasy reinforcement, where their violent thoughts become more elaborate and consuming, eventually leading to actualization, if I could talk, of their fantasies through murder. So we know they exhibit patterns of victim selection and escalation. These patterns can provide important insights into their psychological makeup. Here, we'll pass through this. Over time, serial killers may escalate their behavior, seeking increased thrill and satisfaction from their crimes. This escalation can manifest in various ways, including an increase in violence, frequency of killings, or a shift in the type of victim selected. The psychological factors driving this escalation can be related to a need for greater control, a desire to challenge law enforcement, or a personal need for recognition and notoriety.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I wonder, in the Idaho 4 case, if this is a case of escalation, it's not just, well, I planned on killing one person, but all these other people are here, so they're all victim of circumstance. If it's not that, where all these other people are victim of circumstances, and it is what I feel it is, and that it's escalation, which do you think would fit for the Idaho 4 crime? Do you have any... Do you naturally go one way or the other, that it's challenging of law enforcement, a personal need for recognition or notoriety, or a greater need for control? Or does it even fit escalation?
I don't think we'll ever be able to know without knowing who that suspect is, because how long was this crime thought out? Like, take the suspect out of the equation here. That's where I'm going right now. It doesn't matter if it's Bryan Kohberger. It just doesn't matter. So when I'm thinking about it, was whoever the suspect, did they obsess on this crime day in and day out for weeks and or months, and did it with the intention of creating the perfect crime? Like, trained, planned, and practiced to get done in a certain amount of time quietly while being the most aggressive and violent possible. You know what I mean? Could that be the challenging law enforcement aspect? Making it to where law enforcement doesn't know who it is.
So maybe challenging law enforcement.
Maybe.
Or it's a multi-perp crime. So this doesn't fit at all.
Yeah.
It's not a serial killer.
Absolutely.
And honestly, the interaction before struck me, because I didn't know Ted Bundy interacted with these people before he killed them. I thought, like you thought, he just ran up and broke into the sorority house. He interacted first. He scouted it out first.
Yeah.
Don't tell me that wasn't intentional. That was intentional, okay?
Yeah.
So that makes you wonder, with the frat, there was an altercation earlier that night. And remember, you were talking about the statistics, that you were curious how many murders had an altercation first.
Yeah.
And it was linked to that altercation. And how many times was it not?
Yeah. It's an interesting question, for sure. It is. Yeah. It is.
Because it seems like a heck of a coincidence. Now, you could argue a lot of the evidence against Bryan Kohberger is also a heck of a coincidence.
Yep.
But it's just food for thought, like all of Thought Riot is. So
yeah.
But let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any hypotheses, or speculations, or evidence, or research to add to this, I would love to hear it.
Let us know.